Hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi, hadithi. Kanamkia. I know you don't know that one, right? I grew up in the coast, and when they say Kanamkia, you're supposed to say Niketu. Okay? So hadithi, hadithi. Hadithi, hadithi. Kanamkia. So my name is Kags. It is a difficult name for a lot of people. Every time I say my name is Kags, people say, ah? And I keep repeating it again and again and again. But the good thing about it is that people never forget it. Would you like to know how that name came to be? I wasn't born, as you might guess, Kags. I was born a name that if you Google, you will find out. But I completely changed my name at some point, and I'll tell you why. I came to Nairobi on January 6th, 2000. I am not originally from here, as I think many of us are not. And when I came, we were still under dictatorship. Government services were not what they are today. Life was a little different from what it is today. Infrastructure wasn't working and all that. And I came to Nairobi at a time when if you walk to a government office, for example, I would ask you, what's your name? What's your name? Mutuma. And as soon as he says his name is Mutuma, I would decide, based on all the history, all the politics and everything, whether I would serve him, or if I would serve him, how I would serve him. Is he one of us? Is he one of them? Is he one of the others? Right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? And this is the situation that I came into. Now, the history of that whole tribalism thing came into reality for me at one point. As you heard, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I really get excited by new things. I start them, and then at some point, I get bored, and I start something else. So I started something, and I had a friend. And I'd known this guy for the longest time, and we were great friends. And we both enjoyed starting things. And you know how you are, you're sitting in the restaurant like this, and you're talking, and at some point, a great idea occurred to us, that we could start this business. And we sat down with, notebooks and drew that business out, and we thought it through, and we sort of did everything. Now, a time came that we needed to look for investors, and it turned out that his grandfather is one of the wealthiest people in this town. So I was like, woohoo! Money, right? My family isn't, quite so wealthy, but, theirs is wealthy, and his grandfather might be able to put in the money. So we agreed, dude, go talk to your Guka and see whether your Guka will agree this story. And he went, and he came back with a great news and said, Guka loves this business plan, and Guka will do what? Invest. But first, Guka has to meet everyone in the business, right? And who's everyone? It is me and him. So the day came, appointment. We went down Koinange Street, up a building, into this massive office. I had until that point never seen a boardroom quite that big. I think it was almost as big as this room here. It was massive. I don't know if I sat on the other end and the person sat on this end, whether we would be able to hear each other speak. It was massive. At the time, I was, of course, not so well-spoken, number one. Number two, I didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't dress very well. And I let my hair grow a little bit more. I currently have but then I didn't. It was a full head of hair. So we get in this room, we sit down, and we have to wait for about 2 hours for Guka to come in so that Guka can talk to us. Eventually, Guka finishes whatever he was doing. Sometimes I wonder whether he was actually doing anything or just keeping us waiting to stew a little bit. But eventually he comes into the boardroom, sits at the head of the table, and said, yes, how are you? And then he says what Gukas always say. So who are you? And I tell him, my name is, and he wants to know more. He says, so where are you from? I tell him, says, who's your father? Who's your grandfather? Where exactly? Which side? Which Village. Ah, okay. And your mother's side, which village? And so on and so forth, until we have arrived at a reasonable, GPS coordinate of where I come from and all of the people that have contributed to my existence. When we finally arrived at that, he closed the folder that he had in front of him and said, I am sorry, son, but we cannot work together. How do you feel? A little shocked, yes? Maybe a lot. So I was a little shocked. I said, but what? He says, I'm sorry, son, I cannot work with you. So I said, but why? He says, you need to go and ask, is your grandfather alive? Yes, you need to go and ask your grandfather. I said, what do you mean? He says, just go ask your grandfather. So I come out of the room, I'm in total confusion. There are many voices in my head at this particular time. I don't even know what I am doing. But I get into the car, and rally drivers would have nothing on me. I drove like a maniac. There's no matatu driver. I think matatus would park on the side to just let me go. I think ambulances would park on the side to just let me go, because I was going. I get to my grandfather's house and burst in there and says, why won't so-and-so work with me? Now, my grandfather is a very calm person. So he says, eh? And I say, why will this fellow not work with me? He says, go and tell your grandmother to give you tea. I am agitated. It is not tea I want. It is not anything. I don't even want my grandma. I just want an answer. Why? He says, go and get your grandma. Go and get tea, and then we'll talk. So I go to my grandmother and say, Uka said you give me tea. No highs, no nothing. He says, Uka said you give me tea. So my grandmother looks at me, and she can see that I'm agitated. And says, okay, I'll bring it. I said, no, I'm waiting for it. So you can see me tapping my feet at my grandmother, looking at my watch and trying to think, what is it? It's tea. But eventually tea comes ready. And, she's also very calm. And now I'm grown up, I know why it is that they were keeping me waiting. Because as time went, of course, my adrenaline went a little bit down, even though I'm still agitated, but it went a little bit down, and my voice went down as well. And then I was given the tea. And I walked back with my tea, with 2 cups of tea, and I slammed them on the table and sat down and said, so why would this guy not work with me? So my grandfather says, what happened? I don't want to tell you the story. I want you to answer me. So he says, yeah, what happened? So I composed myself. I tried to think about the best way to tell this story. And in my head, I do not understand what this man is doing. Why are these old men toying with me? Today, they're testing me. Anyway, I sat there and I told him, I had a business plan, and with this guy's grandson, and then we went and we presented it, and he said that he can't work with me. He said, wait, tell me about the business. I don't want to go into that level of detail with you. I went ahead and told him about the business, and he had lots and lots of questions, and there were things. There were computers involved, and he's not the most computer-savvy person in the world, so we had to go back and forth. What is this internet? Internet. What is that? And so on. And so, mobile, okay. So computers, So they're machines. It was a very exhausting conversation. Eventually, he said to me, that's very interesting. It reminds me of a time when I was going to start a business, and it didn't quite work out. We started out in that place, and I was with Mutembei, and then with Mutembei, and then we did this. And I'm like, dude, I came with very specific, very, very specific question, and you're telling me way too many things. But I realize now that he was doing something interesting in my life. So eventually he got me to calm down, and I calmed down. And so he said, the story starts 7 generations ago. Story starts when? So let's count those generations. There's me. And then there's my mom. Then there's my grandma. my grandpa actually. Then there's his dad. Then there's his grandfather. Then there's that person's father. And then there's another one. And finally, the story. Are you seeing how far we have gone? By this time, we're at 100 years, I am dead sure, or more. So he said, in the Gikuyu custom, we make friends a certain way, and we make enemies a certain way. Have you guys heard that? We make friends a certain way, and we make enemies a certain way. Both of those ways involve goats. So, you and I can meet up, call a few of our friends like this ones, and murder a goat. And when we have murdered that goat, we can swear that you and I shall forever and ever be great friends, and our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren shall forever be friends. Alternatively, you and I could change the same goat, and we could say the complete opposite story, that you and I, never friends. We will not work together. Our children shall not marry each other. Our grandchildren shall not marry your grandchildren, and if they ever do, they are cast from here to Timbuktu, and they will grow cross-eyed, and all manner of things will happen. I don't actually know how curses work. I'm making this up. But it's going to be terrible. How many generations ago? I don't even know the name of this person. So I said, so what's the name of this person 7 generations ago? And he goes, I think it's my name. I think. So I am confused. Something happened a couple of 100 years ago, and it's affecting me in 2001. I don't understand. What are we saying? That because of an agreement that your children shall not marry my children, we shall never work together, and whatever it is, this man will not invest in my company. So I said, this is not even tribalism. This is not even clanism. What is this? What do you call it? Is there an ism that you guys can give this? Anyone? It's not even, I mean, what ism could you give it? It's Confucianism. Confucianism. I don't know. So I was confused, and I'm still confused to date. Like, what is it that made this Wazir's Kosana in the first place? And then eventually, at some point, there will be a meeting between the two families in which a goat shall be killed. And now, if any of you have ever been to Gikuyu wedding functions, you know that it's not one function, it's 10. I come to your house, I come to your house, I come to your house, then eventually you come to my house and I come to your house, and so on and so forth, right? So it became eventually very clear to me that this is not going to happen. This business is just one of those businesses that was a great idea that unless I have money for, I would have to just shelve it, right? I was dejected, I was upset. So I told my grandfather, Sawa, and I got back into my car. I didn't actually know where I was going. So my car started coming back towards city center, and as I was coming into Parklands, I became clear as to where I was going. I went into a lawyer's office, I said, hi, what would it take to change my name? So he said, okay, Didpo, then you have to be, in those days, for you to change your name, by the way, you had to be investigated by the NSIS, I think it was still called the NSIS, now it's called NIS. But they had to investigate you, and you had to go to immigration for an interview, and there's a whole long process that I had to go through that takes a year and a half if you're really, really lucky, 3 years if you're moderately lucky, 7 if you're not quite so lucky. I wasn't quite so lucky to get an ID with my new name on it, but hey. I went and started the process of changing my name from that day. And so once I was shown all the paperwork, I was asked, so what are you going to be called? I hadn't thought about it until that point. It hadn't occurred to me that I need to think about what I should be called. Now, my nickname since I was a child was what? Kags. So I said, it shall be. And so it is. Thank you very much.